G'day YouTube. I thought I'd do something a bit different today and do a basic beginner Nepenthes care video. A few people have asked me for one and constantly getting asked tips where to start. So I'll try and clear up a few myths about Nepenthes and give you a quick rundown of just how I grow these plants. And well, they aren't actually hard. A lot of people think they're tricky. You need greenhouses and grow lights and all this stuff to keep them happy. And look, some species, and depending where you live in the world, this can be true. East coast of Australia, particularly from the southern end of New South Wales, maybe not quite all the way down, all the way up through Queensland, you can easily grow these things outside in a brightly lit windowsill, or you can set up a small terrarium, grow 10, various things if that's what you want to do. I personally love my greenhouse, if you haven't noticed. Now, I've brought a couple of plants out here to show you that, these are good beginner plants, stuff that could be interesting to grow, and just sort of run through things. I suppose the first thing I'll go into is you don't need a greenhouse. You can see the fence behind me is covered in Nepenthes. This side of the garden's covered in Nepenthes. And these aren't just your basic beginner plants either. I've got some amazing species out here, some very special plants, and they're growing really well. I'm going to continue to push that. I've got some cuttings of some things I want to test out here to see if that grows well. But to dive into it, your very basic care is they don't need huge pots. This will be happy in this pot for quite some time. The timing for repotting, which is one that a lot of people ask me, is when the plant is drying out before you can water it again. Now, this is going to change on all sorts of things. If you're in a well-watered, humid greenhouse environment, small pots are great because it gives them a chance to dry out a little bit before you water them again. And that's something you do want with Nepenthes. You don't want them to go bone dry, but when the pot starts to look dry on top, you can do the weight test and just pick it up and you'll feel it. And over time, you'll learn what a watered pot versus a drying out pot feels like. I mean, I have let, especially the ones outside, they do occasionally go bone dry. And I mean, the media is crispy dry. I don't recommend it, but give them a good soak through and they're perfectly fine. And when I say a good watering, you hear a lot about overwatering. And yes, it can be an issue with Nepenthes. It's not a volume of water thing, which I think a lot of people think. So they're trying to put tiny amounts of water through the pots, just keep them, damp to moist. You can water very, very heavily. It's just about letting the pot dry out and having the correct media and things so the plant can dry out a bit. I've got my hose just here. So for an example, this pot was watered yesterday, so it doesn't actually need it. The media is well and truly soaked through. But when I do come to water these, just the hose, you can see it draining out the bottom there. And that's really good. Getting all that water out, that flushes any salts, anything that's built up in that media. That helps it flush it all out and keep the media nice and clean. As for light, which is probably the other big thing with Nepenthes, you want sort of bright dappled light is ideal. As you can see, a lot of my garden here and this table, getting some light on it, but also some shadows cast from the trees. I'm very lucky here. We've got some nice big trees that give me a good bit of shade. If you're outside in a garden and it's just open, grassy, cleared area, you might want to think about maybe some shade cloth over the top of them, something like that. Or if you've only got one or two plants, a brightly lit window, enjoy them inside, somewhere that gets some nice easterly morning sun. Once it hits midday afternoon, it can be a bit intense, though a lot of mine do get a lot of straight afternoon sun. And once they've hardened up to the environment, they'll be perfectly fine. Sometimes moving your plants around, if you go from a heavily shaded area to a brightly lit area, you will get some sunburn. You might not be able to see from here. I'll bring you over. Hopefully you can see that, but you can see that reddening on the leaf. Now that's perfectly fine. That's actually from my grow lights. A little bit of red on the leaves, fine. You'll get some beautiful, big, brightly coloured pictures like these, and that's fine. And usually, if it's not overly intense, when you move a plant and it does go red, if it's not burning and damaging the leaves, the newer leaves will grow in stronger and more adapted to the light. Also, as plants mature, they become tougher to the light as well. I should always write things down before I do these videos because I forget half the things I wanted to talk about. I suppose temperatures are going to be based on the individual plants. But if you're sticking to intermediate species, hybrids, and the easier growing things, and as a beginner, it's definitely what I'd suggest. Like my plants out here see everything from 5 degrees at night through winter all the way to the odd 45-degree day. Now, I don't do anything extra on hot or cold days. Or hot days, I might water a bit more, maybe once in the morning if I know it's going to be 40 degrees. And then in the afternoon, once the sun starts going down, I'll come through and water them again, make sure they've had a good drink. Some plants will slow down. Winter particularly, lower light, lower humidity, and cooler temperatures. And your plant might stop picturing altogether. Some of mine do outside. In fact, quite a lot do through winter. And that's perfectly fine. That's something these plants will do. And it's to conserve energy. If they're not getting enough from the sun, from the insects they're feeding on, they will slow right down. But don't stress out. Once spring comes, they will burst back into life. So I figured I should also touch on what are some easy to grow plants. And I made the mistake last time I did a beginner plants video. I showed all these great beginner plants and nothing I have available. And most of them I haven't had available since. So you'd have to go looking for them. So I have brought out a few things that I have available now, I've had available in the past, and I'll have available again in the future. So a great starter plant. These are sold out now. I've got a couple I'm keeping for myself, but I'll hopefully be getting cuttings of these again soon, and I've actually remade the seeds, so these will be coming back. Is Ventricosa crosslavicola. This is a gorgeous little plant. Now, anything with Ventricosa is going to be a nice, easy grower, and these will grow in just about any conditions as long as you've got enough light. Reasonable humidity, ideally over 50%. I do know some people who grow it in less, but Ventricosa hybrids are a great starting plant. You've got so many available, Red Leopard, Ventrata, Lolii ventricosa even. Now, Lolii being a picky, hard-to-grow highland plant, and it's incredibly slow. Crossed in with Ventricosa, that thing just goes nuts. It is a fantastic hybrid and so easy to grow. Once you go into some different stuff, things like Rocco Cross Veitchii here. Both of the parents to this, my Veitchii is on this side, growing outside, and the Rocco is behind me there, and the Rocco particularly just goes nuts. It is such a crazy grower. The root system it creates is massive. We're not actually sure what parentage went into Rocco. It's an old cross. It's believed to be Maxima. I think it's listed as Maxima cross Thorlii, but the Thorlii parent is probably wrong. But either way, Rocco hybrids are fantastic. As you can see there, I'll bring this one up to show you. And these are beautiful looking pictures. Good sized plant. Now this thing's only 11 months old from seed, which for Nepenthes is insane. 14 months. A little bit older. Next I've got out is a Boschiana Zachariana cross Maxima Dark. Maxima hybrids, again, great hardy plants, easy to grow, fast growing. They can give you amazing looking pictures. And they're really tough plants. A lot of my, not all, most of my Maximas are all growing outside and haven't had any issues with them at all. This is the same mother plant, Boschiana zachariana cross veitchii. And again, you'll see beautiful striped peristome from the veitchii. Nice model picture body, good thick hardy leaves, and these will do great outside. I've got the same cross outside. I think I've still got some in the greenhouse as well, but they're a great easy growing plant. Another one, so all those so far are from my own breeding stock. This is another one. This is Lowlii cross veitchii cross Maxima Dark. You see that's got some great size on it, and this is actually growing on the fence and not a problem. Yeah, you will get a bit of damaged leaves. I had a huge hailstorm a while ago that just decimated my plants, tore so many leaves apart. I think it only snapped one stem, thankfully. But these are tough plants. Everything's come back. I didn't lose any plants. The one vine got snapped, and that's put out 2 new growth points, and is going crazy again. So you don't have to worry too much. It's disappointing, but your plants will come back from quite a lot of damage if it happens. Another one that is definitely an easy grower, but at least in Australia at the moment, is not on the sort of beginner price range, and particularly a plant at this size, but Nepenthes veitchii. Now, this is one of my favourite species. You can see here the beautiful bulbous squat picture body and the huge striped peristome. Now, these are absolutely gorgeous plants, and I think as breeding continues, they are going to come down in price. It's cost and demand sort of thing. I've been working on a few different species. Hopefully, I'm going to get some good germination on those seeds, and I think I'll have about 5 or 6 grexes if all works out. So fingers crossed of these coming out in the next couple of years. Just got to see how fast I can get them up to size and get them growing. I think that's about all I can think of off the top of my head for care. But the big things to think of is just don't let them dry out. Good dappled light, not full direct sun. Mine do get a bit from time to time, but these aren't full sun plants. You're not going to put them out all day in the sun. You will cook them. But if they get a bit burnt, keep your eye on them. If the new leaves are continuing to burn, pull it back a little bit, put them somewhere slightly shadier, shuffle them around. It's going to be finding what position works best for you. I suppose the one other thing I should really touch on is potting media. So many different options available, and some are easier to find than others. My personal preference is some variation of cocoa chips and perlite. The hardest thing with that though is the cocoa chips do generally need to be washed, so I soak them for 3 to 5 days and change the water in between each one. But once you've done it, you'll have a good block, and you can get 20-litre blocks, which will do quite a few plants. Mix that half and half with some perlite, and you're good to go. As for size of repotting, that's again goes back to when are they drying out. If I was growing out this outside, and I think these will come outside shortly, I'd probably put it into this size pot, and that size they can stay in for a good few years. The big advantage with cocoa is it doesn't really break down. So when it comes to repotting, I should be able to just slide this out of the pot, put it into a bigger pot, fill in around it, water it in, good to go. The other main mix, I suppose, is sphagnum, moss, and perlite. Same thing, 50-50 mix. You don't need to wash the sphagnum, but there are drawbacks. It does break down, so you do need to repot. I'll give the plant a hard repot every couple of years. Now that means washing as much of the media off the roots as you can, which isn't great for the plant. It will bounce back, but it will definitely take it harder than if you just slip it out of one pot straight into another and keep it going. But it is generally an easier mix. So you play around, see what works for you. Some people love sphagnum moss. I personally, I don't think I've got any. Oh, I think there's one plant that I haven't repotted out of an old sphagnum mix, which I really need to do. But generally speaking, now everything goes into cocoa. If you got big chunky plants like a big Veitchi, bigger than this, I'll use larger chips. But a medium chip size is a good all-rounder, which will cover pretty much all your plants. Especially, unless if you're buying, microscopic seedlings that are, 2-3 centimeters across, which I don't suggest for beginners anyway. If you're using that, I tend to go a cocoa core or a fine chip with a bit of cocoa core in it. But anyway, I think that's it for today. If you have any questions, always feel free to send me a message or a comment on here, message me on Instagram, and I'm more than happy to try and help. All right, until next time. Cheers.